Most people know the feeling. The day ends. The lights go off. The room becomes quiet. And suddenly the brain begins replaying moments you wish had never happened. A strange comment you made years ago. An awkward interaction from school. Something you said in a meeting last week. The memory appears vividly, almost like a scene from a film. The body reacts again. A slight cringe, a tightening in the stomach, a subtle wave of discomfort. What makes this experience confusing is how unnecessary it seems. The event might have happened 5 minutes ago or 15 years ago, and yet the mind chooses this exact moment, when everything is silent, to bring it back. Psychologists have long been fascinated by this pattern. Why do embarrassing memories return so strongly during quiet moments? Why does the brain replay social mistakes far more than successful moments? And why do these memories often appear just as a person is trying to rest? The answer has less to do with embarrassment itself, and more to do with how the brain organizes social memory. Because to the brain, social mistakes are not simply memories. They are information the mind believes is important to study. Human memory is not a neutral recording system. It is selective. Certain experiences are prioritized because they appear useful for survival. For most of human history, survival depended heavily on social belonging. Being accepted by a group meant protection, food, and cooperation. Being rejected could mean isolation or danger. Because of this, the brain developed systems designed to monitor social signals very closely. Moments of approval, embarrassment, laughter, criticism, or awkwardness became extremely important pieces of information. When an embarrassing moment occurs, the brain often treats it as a social warning. Something happened that might have threatened acceptance within the group. Even if the situation was minor, the brain may mark it as something worth reviewing later. This is why embarrassing memories often feel unusually vivid. The brain stores them with strong emotional detail so they can be examined again, not to punish the person, but to analyze what happened socially. From the brain's perspective, replaying these moments is a way of studying human interaction. But there is another detail that makes these memories particularly powerful. The brain processes social experiences differently from most other events. When a person trips while walking alone, the memory often fades quickly. When the same event happens in front of others, the memory can remain sharp for years. The difference is not the action itself, it is the presence of witnesses. Research in social psychology shows that the brain becomes far more attentive when other people are watching. In those moments, the mind activates systems responsible for reputation monitoring. These systems track how others might perceive us. Even subtle facial expressions, laughter, or silence can be interpreted as social feedback. If the brain detects a possible negative interpretation, embarrassment, awkwardness, or disapproval, it may store the moment more carefully. This careful storage is what allows the brain to replay the moment later with surprising clarity. The memory is not just about what happened. It is about what the brain believes others may have thought. Nighttime creates the perfect conditions for these memories to reappear. During the day, the brain is busy processing new information. Conversations, tasks, movement, sounds, and decisions constantly occupy attention. This activity leaves little room for deeper memory review. But when the environment becomes quiet, the brain often shifts into a different mode. Psychologists sometimes describe this as reflective processing. The mind begins scanning stored experiences, comparing past events, and organizing social information. Embarrassing memories often surface during this time because they carry unresolved social meaning. The brain may revisit them to examine details that were missed earlier. What exactly did that person mean? Did the joke sound strange? Did others notice the mistake? These questions are rarely answered directly. Instead, the brain replays the moment repeatedly, searching for patterns. From the outside, this can feel like the mind is torturing itself, but internally the brain is performing a kind of quiet, social analysis. Another reason these memories replay so easily is connected to how emotion strengthens recall. Not all memories are stored with the same intensity. Some events fade quickly because the brain decides they are ordinary. Others remain extremely vivid. Embarrassing moments often fall into the second category. When embarrassment occurs, the body produces a small surge of stress-related signals. Heart rate may increase slightly, the face may flush. Attention narrows for a moment. These signals act like a marker placed on the memory. The brain interprets the event as emotionally significant, and the memory becomes easier to retrieve later. This is why a brief awkward moment may remain clearer than an entire ordinary day. The emotional tag tells the brain that something socially important happened. Later, when the mind enters quiet or reflective states, memories with these emotional tags tend to surface first. They are easier for the brain to locate and replay. In this way, embarrassment acts like a spotlight placed on a moment the brain believes should not be forgotten. There is also a cognitive pattern, known as the spotlight effect, that plays a role in these memories. People naturally assume that others notice their behavior far more than they actually do. When something awkward happens, the brain often imagines that everyone present focused intensely on the mistake. In reality, most people are usually thinking about themselves. Their attention moves quickly from one thought to the next, but the brain does not experience the situation from their perspective. It experiences the moment from the inside. From that internal viewpoint, the awkward moment feels extremely visible. Because of this, the brain may exaggerate the importance of the event. When the memory is replayed later, the mind sometimes reconstructs the scene as if the entire room noticed the mistake. This reconstruction strengthens the emotional weight of the memory. Over time, the replayed version of the event can feel more significant than the moment that actually happened. Another interesting feature of these memories is how the brain fills in missing information. During an awkward or embarrassing moment, the brain rarely captures every detail accurately. Attention is often divided between the situation and the body's emotional response. Later, when the brain replays the event, it attempts to complete the scene. This process can lead the mind to imagine reactions that were never clearly observed. A brief glance might become a look of judgment. A neutral expression might become disapproval. Silence might be interpreted as criticism. These imagined details are not necessarily intentional distortions. They are the brain's attempt to create a complete social narrative. Because humans are highly sensitive to social signals, the brain prefers explanations rather than uncertainty. When information is missing, the mind often fills the gaps with possibilities. And once those possibilities are replayed several times, they can begin to feel like accurate memories. There is also a timing effect that makes nighttime memories feel stronger than daytime memories. As the day progresses, the brain gradually accumulates mental fatigue. Decision-making slows slightly, attention softens, and analytical control becomes less active. During this state, emotional memories can move more easily into awareness. Without the distractions of daily activity, the brain becomes more sensitive to internal thoughts. A quiet room, dim lighting, and physical stillness reduce external stimulation. This allows stored memories to move closer to the center of attention. Embarrassing experiences are particularly likely to appear during this time because they already carry emotional markers. Once one memory appears, the brain may begin linking it to others. A recent awkward conversation might lead to another memory from last year, then another from childhood. The mind can create a chain of social memories, each connected by the same theme. From the outside, it can feel as if the brain has suddenly opened a hidden archive of awkward moments. When the brain begins replaying embarrassing memories, it rarely stops with just one. Instead, the mind often moves through a chain of similar moments. A recent awkward interaction might trigger the memory of another social mistake. That memory may lead to another from years earlier. Psychologists sometimes describe this as associative recall. Memories in the brain are stored in networks rather than isolated files. Experiences that share emotional similarities are often connected to each other. Embarrassment, awkwardness, and social uncertainty form a powerful category within these networks. Once the brain activates one memory from that category, nearby memories become easier to access. This is why a single embarrassing moment can suddenly lead to a cascade of others. The brain is not intentionally searching for uncomfortable experiences. It is simply following connections between related memories. Each recall strengthens the pathway between them. Over time, these connections can make embarrassing memories feel unusually easy for the mind to retrieve. There is also an interesting paradox in how the brain treats these moments. Embarrassing memories often feel extremely important when they replay in the mind. Yet the same events are rarely remembered by other people involved. Studies of social memory consistently show that individuals remember their own mistakes far more clearly than the mistakes of others. This happens because the brain records experiences from a personal perspective. Internal reactions, thoughts, and emotional signals are all stored alongside the event. Other people present during the moment do not experience these internal signals. For them, the event may have passed quickly among many other observations, but for the person who experienced the embarrassment, the moment contains far more internal detail. Because of this imbalance in perspective, the memory may feel far larger than it actually appeared to anyone else. Another feature of these memories is how the brain edits them over time. Memory is not a fixed recording that remains unchanged. Each time a memory is recalled, the brain reconstructs it. During this reconstruction, small details can shift. The emotional tone of the memory may intensify. Certain parts of the scene may become sharper while other parts fade. This process is known as memory reconsolidation. When embarrassing moments are replayed repeatedly, the emotional element can slowly grow stronger. The brain may emphasize the most uncomfortable parts of the memory. A brief awkward pause might become longer in recollection. A single laugh might feel like a room full of people reacting. Over time, the replayed version of the memory can become more vivid than the original experience. The brain is not deliberately exaggerating the event. It is simply reshaping the memory each time it is revisited. Interestingly, the brain does not replay only negative social experiences. It also revisits positive social moments. However, these memories often feel quieter and less intrusive. One reason is that positive experiences usually signal that social belonging is secure. If a conversation went well or a joke was appreciated, the brain registers that outcome quickly. There is less uncertainty to analyze. Embarrassing moments, on the other hand, contain unanswered social questions. Did others notice? Did the comment sound strange? Did the moment affect how someone was perceived? Because these questions remain unresolved, the brain may continue returning to the event. It searches the memory for clues that could clarify the situation. From the brain's perspective, the replay is not simply about embarrassment. It is about understanding the social meaning of the moment. There is also a deeper evolutionary pattern behind this behavior. Humans are one of the most socially dependent species on Earth. For most of human history, survival depended on maintaining stable relationships within a group. Cooperation was necessary for hunting, protection, and raising children. Because of this, the human brain evolved systems designed to monitor social harmony very closely. Small disruptions in social interaction could signal potential conflict or rejection. Embarrassment became one of the emotions connected to this monitoring system. It acts like a signal that something in the social exchange may have gone slightly wrong. When the brain detects this signal, it may store the moment with extra care. Later, the mind may revisit the event to examine what happened. This pattern helped early humans adjust their behavior and maintain acceptance within the group. In modern life, the same system still operates. Even when the consequences of a social mistake are minor, the brain treats the moment as information worth reviewing. Another reason embarrassing memories feel so powerful is related to the brain's prediction system. The mind constantly tries to anticipate how social situations will unfold. It builds internal models of how conversations, reactions, and interactions usually work. When something happens that does not match these expectations, the brain notices immediately. A joke that receives silence instead of laughter, a comment that creates confusion instead of agreement. These moments create what psychologists call a prediction error. The brain expected one outcome but observed another. Prediction errors are important signals for learning. They tell the brain that its current understanding of a situation might need adjustment. Because of this, the brain may replay the event repeatedly. It reviews the details, searching for clues about what caused the unexpected reaction. The memory becomes a kind of puzzle the mind tries to solve. There is also an interesting contrast between how people experience their own embarrassment and how they observe embarrassment in others. When someone else makes a small social mistake, observers often move on quickly. The moment might even feel amusing or relatable. But when the same type of mistake happens to oneself, the emotional reaction is far stronger. This difference occurs because the brain processes personal reputation differently from external observation. Personal embarrassment activates areas of the brain connected to self-awareness and social evaluation. The mind becomes highly focused on how the situation might affect identity or perception. Observers, however, are not experiencing this internal evaluation. They simply witness an event among many others. Because of this difference in perspective, the memory of the event can feel far heavier for the person who experienced it. The brain is not just remembering what happened, it is also remembering how it felt to be the center of the moment. Over time, the brain slowly reorganizes which memories remain active and which ones fade. Many embarrassing memories that feel vivid today eventually lose their emotional intensity. The brain gradually updates its understanding of social patterns as more experiences accumulate. Older moments become less central within memory networks. New conversations, new environments, and new interactions provide additional data. These experiences help the brain refine its predictions about social behavior. As this process continues, earlier embarrassing events may be recalled less frequently. They become part of a larger collection of social experiences rather than isolated moments. The brain's attention slowly shifts toward more recent interactions. Even though the memory itself may remain stored, the emotional signal attached to it often weakens. The moment becomes just another scene in the long archive of human interaction. Another subtle feature of embarrassing memories is the way they influence attention long after the event has ended. Once the brain marks a moment as socially important, it often becomes more alert to similar situations in the future. For example, if a person once said something awkward in a group conversation, the brain may later become more attentive during similar conversations. Small pauses, facial reactions, or shifts in tone may suddenly feel more noticeable. This heightened attention is not random. The brain is attempting to gather additional information about social patterns. In other words, the embarrassing moment becomes part of the brain's learning system. It creates a reference point. Future interactions are quietly compared against that earlier experience. If a similar situation appears again, the brain quickly recognizes it. From the brain's perspective, the memory is not simply about the past, it becomes a piece of data used to understand future social interactions. Interestingly, many embarrassing memories remain vivid even when the actual social consequences were extremely small. A person might replay a moment repeatedly, even though the other people involved likely forgot the event within minutes. This difference highlights how the brain prioritizes internal perception over external reality. What matters most to the brain is not always what truly happened in the environment. What matters is how the event was interpreted at the time. If the brain interpreted the moment as socially significant, the memory may receive stronger attention. This interpretation can occur very quickly. A brief silence in a conversation, a puzzled look, or an unexpected reaction may be enough. The brain stores the moment as something worth analyzing. Later, when the memory returns, the mind may still treat it as unresolved information, even if the outside world moved on immediately. Another factor that strengthens these memories is repetition. Each time a memory is recalled, the brain briefly reactivates the same neural pathway that was used to store the original event. If the memory is replayed many times, that pathway can become easier to activate. This does not necessarily mean the memory becomes more accurate. It simply becomes more accessible. Psychologists sometimes compare this to walking through tall grass. The first time a path is used, it is difficult to see. But after walking the same route repeatedly, a clear trail begins to form. Embarrassing memories can develop similar mental pathways. The more often the brain revisits the event, the easier it becomes to recall again in the future. This is one reason why some memories feel almost automatic. They appear quickly, even when the person was not actively trying to remember them. Despite how intense these memories can feel, the brain eventually shifts its attention toward newer information. Human memory systems are constantly reorganizing themselves. New conversations, new experiences, and new environments gradually reshape the network of stored memories. As time passes, earlier moments lose some of their prominence. The brain becomes more focused on recent interactions that may carry greater relevance. This process does not erase old memories completely. Instead, it changes how frequently they are accessed. Memories that once appeared often may slowly fade into the background of the mind. They remain stored, but the brain no longer treats them as urgent information. In this way, the emotional weight of an embarrassing moment often softens naturally with time. The memory becomes quieter within the larger collection of life experiences. From a psychological perspective, embarrassing memories reveal something important about how the human brain understands social life. Humans are constantly interpreting signals from the people around them. Facial expressions, tone of voice, body language, and small reactions all become part of this interpretation. The brain collects these signals and attempts to form a coherent picture of how social interactions unfold. Embarrassing moments often occur when that picture suddenly becomes unclear. Something unexpected interrupts the usual pattern of interaction. The brain notices the disruption immediately. Because social understanding is so important, the mind may return to the event repeatedly. It studies the moment from different angles. Not to punish the individual, but to improve its understanding of how social behavior works. In this way, embarrassing memories become part of the brain's ongoing attempt to interpret human interaction. When viewed from a distance, the replaying of embarrassing memories becomes easier to understand. The brain is not simply dwelling on uncomfortable moments. It is performing a form of quiet social analysis. It reviews interactions, compares outcomes, and attempts to refine its predictions about human behavior. Moments that carry emotional signals naturally receive more attention. Embarrassment, uncertainty, and social confusion all act as markers that guide the brain's review process. During quiet periods, especially at night, the mind has the opportunity to revisit these stored experiences. Memories emerge, connect with similar moments, and briefly move through awareness. From the outside, this process can feel mysterious. But inside the brain, it is part of an ongoing effort to understand the complex patterns of social life. Each remembered moment becomes a small piece of the larger story the brain is constantly trying to interpret.